Hello, everyone. Dipti, we are good to go?
Yes, Fazil.
Okay. Hi, everyone. This is Faisal Shabir. I'm working with IPPF SARO office. I welcome you all for this wonderful session, engaging a changing world, increasing youth participation. So today, this session is going to be moderated by Anita. And Anita is currently the global lead youth at IPPF. She leads IPPF global agenda on youth engagement and leadership, comprehensive sexuality education, youth-led advocacy, and youth-friendly services. She also supports the effective mainstreaming of the youth-centered approaches in IPPF member association. Anita is a human rights lawyer who obtained her master's degree in public international law and a postgraduate diploma in women's human rights law from Queen Mary University in London. She also extensive experience in human rights policy and legal advocacy at regional and international levels, spanning over 12 years. We are pleased that Anita is with us and going to moderate this session. Now I would request Anita to please take forward this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Faisal, and good afternoon from wherever you are. We want to just begin this session. I will just speak to a brief introduction of this session and to say that, currently there are approximately over 1.8 billion young people in the world today, who are a crucial resource for innovative change towards a more equal and sustainable world. Throughout history, civically engaged young people have proven to be a powerful force for change. And in recent years, we have witnessed youth-led movements that have successfully gained international attention and challenged established practices within public, private, and not-for-profit organizations and institutions. The COVID-19 outbreak has created a climate that poses a colossal threat now and in the future to young people and their families. Young people have been disproportionately impacted during and post-COVID-19 crisis, particularly those in emergency and humanitarian situations, and those living in conditions, and these conditions will be further exacerbated by the pandemic. While enabling the voice, the agency, and action of youth as identifiers of solutions for problems affecting themselves and others is critical, this is indeed not often the case. Young people's participation is often mired with myriad of challenges. So today we have a team of prominent activists and champions who will showcase their journeys, their work, and discuss in what ways they have been able to increase or work to increase young people's participation within their countries. So today we have a panel of 4 exciting speakers. First, we have Anu Bista. Anu Bista is a manager on Youth and Comprehensive Sex Education, Family Planning Association of Nepal. Anu is a manager, as I said, she's a manager on Youth and Comprehensive Sexuality Education. She has more than 7 years of experience working with young people from marginalized communities in Nepal. She has extensive knowledge of developing learning materials on CSC. She is a master in public health through the European Union Erasmus Mundus Scholarship. Manu, thank you for joining us and a warm welcome.
Thank you, Anita.
Thank you. Secondly, we have Miss Sanjia Shreta, who is a youth champion from the Family Planning Association of Nepal. Sanjia is the young leader at Women Deliver. She is the secretary of Women Wing of the ADRAD Nepal, and she's also a co-founder and treasurer of Chain for Change. She holds a Bachelor of Social Work and major in English, and a postgraduate in psychology. She's also currently pursuing her master's in social work. A very warm welcome to you, Sanjia. And we also have Ms. Sonal Gianni. Sonal is an LGBTQ activist and filmmaker. She's also the co-founder of Youth LGBTQ Initiative, Yariyan, and Mumbai-based support group Umang, which is a safe space for lesbian, bisexual women, and transmasculine persons. She has appeared in numerous talk shows, documentaries, and film. A warm welcome to you, Sonal.
Thank you. Very excited for this panel today.
Thank you. And last but certainly not least, we have Arjun Kumi, who is the founder of Green Youth Lumbini in Nepal. Arjun was born in 1987 in the birthplace of the Buddha in Lumbini in Nepal. He was involved in the conservation campaign from his early school days, and he has worked in a rural development center organization and contributed to peace building campaign to rehabilitate the victims of Nepal's internal conflict. He founded the Green Youth Lumbini movement to conserve biodiversity and to mobilize youth for nature conservation and to train community livelihood skills in 2013. Arjun has been awarded by Nepal's forest minister for his forestation programs, and he's also been awarded the Young Conservation Leader Award by the Worldwide Foundation in Nepal in 2014 for various conservation efforts. A very warm welcome to you, Arjun.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So to begin this session, we want to, go straight to the content of this discussion. And first, we want to understand the topic of today's discussion. It's about young people's participation in the current context of a changing world. And I want to pose this question to each of the panelists. Why is young people's participation important in the current context of a changing world? I'll start with you, Anu.
Yes, thank you, Anita, and hi and namaste, everyone. Yes, of course, youth in the current situation is very much important because they composite of the huge portion of the global population as well by themselves. And also they are the full of energy and they have the full of the innovative ideas that we must take on. And we could see that the youths today are like they have been very much successful to prove themselves in different field, and even they are very much they are confident to raise their voice against their own rights, either it is in sexual and reproductive health or their own sexuality or even for any human rights. Yes, youths have been a very the change makers. I'm always saying that youths are the change makers, and they should be they should be put forward and given more and more opportunities like this to show their to show and even have a cross learning. So yes, Anita, I will keep it here now.
Thank you so much. Sanjia, do you want to come in and respond to the question?
Yes, youth are the champions of their own ideas, their own experience, and their own expertise. And yes, so as youth are their own ideas, and they should be included in every aspects, beginning from the policy making to implementation to evaluation and every process. And it may include inclusion at every stages, as I mentioned, shared power, clear and transparent messaging, also include these aspects. So I would like to keep it here for now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'd like to hear from all the panelists before we go to the next session. Sonal?
No, I couldn't agree more with Sanjay and Anu. I really agree with both of you. I think beyond that also, I think that, the young population is our future, right? At the end of the day. I do find that working with the young people, just like Anu mentioned, is very, energizing, because there is young energy. There is a certain kind of boldness, which sometimes gets missing when you've been very old in movements, I would say, like, a kind of, I think you get jaded, which is not there in young people. And beyond that, I also think that, sometimes solutions to old problems require new solutions. And I think that young people are able to sort of provide that. We might also want to consider that, right now it is the digital age at the end of the day. And, young people who are, currently, they are much more hands-on with the tools. So, I mean, communication is very much going to be reliant on digital mediums, and it's a huge population out there, right? So we must obviously, give them a platform.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much, Sonal. Arjun? Just your own sentiments about, why we should engage young people before we move into the meat of the discussion.
Yeah. I just want to say everyone that there was nothing new what we are going to do. Everything is old things. We just modify and we just use our examples or use our learning from other community, so we can involve that activities in our community. So youth is a large number of community who have energy, who have innovative ideas, and who have aim to do something about our community. So there was a opportunity also, and there was a challenges also to work with youths. But when we go with a good aims, when we go with good ideas in our community, so youth can involve in our activities.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much. And I totally agree with you, Arjun. So we want to really go into the next session, which is, about the individual presentations from each of the presenters. I want to welcome Anu and Sanjia to just share with us your presentation regarding, the topic today. Over to you.
Thank you, Anita. So first of all, I will be presenting on the status of the youth and how the Family Planning Association of Nepal has placed youth in its organizational structure. Then Sanjaya will be talking about the inclusion that FPAN has made, followed by the case study. Okay. So can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay. So yes. So Family Planning Association of Nepal was initially established in 1959, which has been a full member association of International Planned Parenthood after in 1969, after 10 years. And then it has extended its services, has been extended its operational area in by 2010, and currently it has extended its not only its operational areas but also its services across. Initially it was established to provide the family planning services to the people of Nepal, but later on, because of the need of the sexual and reproductive health, it feels that the components of the sexual and reproductive health should be provided, and it should not be limited to the family planning services only. So it has extended its services and even its operational area. So currently it has the direct presence in 28 districts, but works across 37 districts, and and have been have been increasing its implementation area, operational area, through its community-based distributors as well. And we have the community-based distributors as a reproductive health volunteers and peer educators. There you can see the statistics, and I'm not going to spell out here. And we have also the Youth Information Center and School Information Center. So I have only highlighted the structure that we have for the youth and adolescents. So this is the same thing that I have mentioned in my earlier slide. So currently we have 206 peer educators who are trained on the comprehensive sexuality education and also on sexual and reproductive health rights, and they are the community-based distributors also. So at the branch and the central level, we have ensured a minimum of 20% of the youth presence, and this is the 3-member, but now it is like 2 members are there in the governing body. Fortunately, I could say fortunately, because we have the 2 girls representation there at the governing body. It's not that we are discouraging boys, but it is an open selection. So obviously one has we have secured 2 position, and then we have the youth subcommittees at each of the branches, where 3 of the youth members form the subcommittees, and they form their own peer educator network. And then we have the minimum of 3 peer groups in our 56 community clinics, and also each peer groups has the 5 members in each of their groups. And this is some of the statistics I want to show here, that family planning association, how the family planning association services have been distributed among the youths and adolescents. And if you could you can see here, like from 2015 to 2020, we have been continuously providing, it is like we have been providing CSE education for in and out of school from since last 2008, and continuously we are providing. The statistics was some drop in 19 and 20. It is obvious, it is with the obvious reason that the COVID-19 has leads all the restrictions. Then we have this service achievement. If you could see, I think the data clearly shows that the number of total long acting services, you can see that the short acting services, there is 27% of young people receiving the services, and long acting also there is 1.33%. This is in 2020, which is somehow decreased in 2021 because of the COVID-19 situation, but we are continuously providing these services to the young people, and they are also reaching to the service centers. And among the total contraceptive users and the medical abortion, there it is seen that the 28% of the population, 28% the youth composite has occupied 28% of the total contraceptive users, from the total contraceptive users, while under the medical abortion it is similar to that. It comes up to 26% of the young population is receiving this medical abortion services from our clinics. And few of the activities we are currently doing with and for the adolescents and youth are like creating enabling environment by capacitating the teachers and also the policy makers, who could ultimately have a role to create a very enabling environment to discuss on the sexual and reproductive health rights. And then we are also doing some advocacy workshop with the policy makers, and we have formed some technical group who, this is also called the advocacy group, who could talk about the sexual and reproductive health rights for these young people. And we have developed some teaching learning materials, and we have been continuously doing in and out of school sessions in coordination and collaboration with the schools. So this is the booklet that we have developed, since we know that the because of the teacher-student relationship. Students are not that comfortable to talk about their SRH queries with their teachers or any seniors. And while they talk about their peers, they may lack correct or complete information that may mislead to their sexual and reproductive health practices. So we have developed some 10 booklets in a Q&A format that will support them to answer some of the queries, and some queries will be answered from the helpline numbers that we have already we have been providing through our ICBCC materials, which is toll-free number, and that operates from 7 to 7. Currently that operates from 7 to 7. And key achievements here I want to highlight is we have been able to advocate and integrate CSE into the 5-year strategic plan and health policy of one of our province. And then there is endorsement and acknowledgement CSU work, and currently FPAN is known as the one of the leading organization on the CSE and young people sexual and reproductive health rights. And then we are not only working with the education or only with the health, but we have been collaboratively working with both of them and bringing the health and education unit together to work for this sexual and reproductive health. And the training we have been providing and trying to build a cadre of the trained teachers so that they can openly discuss on the sexual and reproductive health rights or health issues, and also can facilitate the the myths they have on the understanding of sexual and reproductive health, since the understanding across the person to person or even the culture, society to society, the understanding of sexual and reproductive health varies and is very limited to the sex education. So we want to do that. We want to clarify that, and besides that, we have also faced some of the challenges, because working on the adolescent health is not that easy, and since they are very active group, and they have that transition phase. Their lots of queries are coming in, so this is very challenging. And what we understand faced is youth engagement program is completely lacking, because we should have a very intensive youth engagement program so that they have the motivation to participate in the program, and also to respond to the SRS needs of the diverse youth group like PLHIB, LGBTIQ, or the people living with disabilities. There is very insufficient program, and the program which is being implemented in this field is not at that sufficient level, which needs to be extended and even discussed more. And there is also the lack of the online platform to learn about the sexual and reproductive health rights. It should be like there should be a genuine platform that gives the right information to the young population, and it should be the age appropriate. And we feel that this is the lack of online platform, because the youths are very much engaged nowadays, very much engaged in the online platform, digital platform. So we should think on this also. And also we lack in Nepal. We lack the evidences on the national level data or even the local level statistics on the adolescent health. So that leads to the challenge to develop the very realistic adolescent health program, and the policy awareness on the adolescent and youth health is inadequate. The policy makers are taking adolescents in a very easy way, not given that priority. And when it comes to the adolescents health, it always ended with the school health education or even the health and physical education or the curriculum based education, but we actually need the competency based education. And less youth engaging approaches should also be youth engaging. And some of the opportunities we have seen that these are the opportunities that the current National Adolescent Health and Development Strategy has well spoken about the wider perspective of the adolescent health. It is not limited to the sexual and reproductive health, because adolescent health is influenced by a number of confounding factors are there. There are the factors that is working, that is influencing one's adolescent health, such as your beliefs, your practice, your family background, your education. So now the National Adolescent Health and Development Strategy is very well spoken about these all the things, and even the education sector plan has been able to talk about these things, and these policies, provincial level policies, and also our presence at the local level, at the provincial level, has been like, we have been 63 years, we have been continuously working on the sexual and reproductive health rights, and that has also given us the opportunities to work on it. And also our presence at the national or provincial or even the local level, reproductive health and ASRH committees are also one of the opportunities that we could see. So I'm coming to the end of my presentation by showing some of the photographs, like how and at what stage our youths of AFPAN is contributing or making the engagement at the national level or international level events. So this is the photographs that our youth, all are our youths that has been participating in the development of the implementation plan of National Adolescent Health and Development Strategy workshop. And this is the one that our youth is talking about the roadmap for the ICPD 25 during the World Population Day. And with the country representative of UNFPA Nepal in the ICPD 25 summit. Our two of the youths, I think one that there is Suraksha from, now she is the Board of Trustees in the IPPF, but we two of them are presenting on the ICPD 25, and few of the activities we have been doing for the adolescents' health. And thank you for your patience, and we'll love to have more queries in the discussion Q&A session. Thank you so much, and I'd like to request Sanjaya to continue. Is that okay, Anita?
Yes, please, Sanjaya can present. Thank you so much, and Anu.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry, Sanjaya, we can't hear you.
Sanjaya, please unmute yourself.
So am I audible now?
Yes, you're audible now, Sanjaya.
Okay. I'll share my screen. So I'm using screen reading, so screen reading software. So please bear with.
Sanjay, if it is okay with you, I can share the slide and you can, let me know when to share the slides.
Okay, sure. Maybe that will be much better for me as well.
I'll just share it. Just a minute.
Okay, so thank you.
It's up. So
Okay. Okay, so is that slide 1?
yes.
Okay, so good morning, so good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for having me here today. I'll be speaking on the engaging persons with youth with disabilities in SRHR. So slide 2, please.
Done.
Okay. Persons with disabilities defined by UNCRPD is about the persons having long-term physical, sensory, and other impairments. And because of various barriers we have in society, they face limitations in interacting with the environment, and because of that, they have the limitation in full and active participation in society in an equal basis with others. And the world, and there are 15% of disability in the world, and in Nepal there are around 2%. So next slide, please. Okay, the World Report on Disability defines, says that the persons with disabilities have no easy access to health services, and they are often denied with health services, or they are not treated properly, or even the health service provider are not skilled in treating persons with disabilities. And the FPAN's PWD project baseline survey report also shows that persons with disabilities are often viewed discriminatively. They are not they are not seen as a partner, as a guardian, and as a sexual being. So next slide, please.
Done.
Okay. Sharing my laptop. So, okay. So here we have. Okay, so here are some activities we have been doing, and especially persons with disabilities have been engaging in awareness raising sessions, not only for persons with disabilities, but also for their parents, their relatives, and sensitizing to the communities. And comprehensive sexuality education is the most important. So we are also working on the school settings and also out of school settings, because most of the students are also not directly included in school settings. So, and I've also spoken as a youth champion in ICB World Blindness Summit in July 2021. So especially focusing on the issues of the visually impairment and their SRH education. About the peer education, there are various peer groups led by the active youth peer educators, and the peer education, peer counseling has been one of the best approach to in case of awareing SRH. And the information education system especially are not disabled friendly, because disability, there are various types of disabilities, and the materials should be accessible for every type of disability. And in case of the youth engagement, FN has been engaging various youth in the advocacy moments and various occasions. The recent one I would like to say is on the education sector plan of Nepal. So next slide, please. Okay, so next slide.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
done.
yes, thank you. Yes. Now I would like to highlight on the few key aspects. Next slide, please. Next slide, please.
Yeah,
okay, yes, thank you so much. So here I've mentioned few points, accessibility in terms of infrastructure and attitude. In case of infrastructure, if infrastructure would be accessible for disability, then it would be accessible for everyone. Because I would like to also give example, if there would be a ramp, then besides persons with disability, those persons who have problems in their, for example, in their legs, can also easily access health services. And attitudinal barrier in case of judgment and creating safe spaces, it's always important. And as I already mentioned previously, also the communication, education, and communication education materials should be accessible. It may include including sign language interpretation, for example, or creating in an easy to read version, or printing in a large text, so that those persons who have limited vision can also easily read. And digital platform and websites. This is a big problem for us, because most of us who have a visual impairment use screen reading softwares, and most of the graphical text and most of the website are biggest barrier for us. So next slide, please. Oh, so here I have included a picture, so you can also watch it. Here is a sign language interpretation being done. This is one of the sessions I have taken. So next slide, please. Okay, before playing the video, here I've kept a video as an example. So let's pause the video first and discuss on it. So please, may we have a video?
Hendak perbankan pribadi terus diperhitungkan bahwa niujanku baiklah ke pasal saat ini.
Sorry, the sound is really not clear.
I'll just reshare. Just give me one moment.
Okay. So maybe as we are preparing the sound, Sanjay, you can just give us a brief overview of the video.
Okay.
What's it about?
Okay, definitely. This video I've just kept it in my slide as an example to show how we can create accessible videos, so that every diversity can have equal access to it and gain knowledge. So as you can see, this video is in Nepali. So this video is in a easy to read version, simple language without jargon, so everyone can easily listen and understand. Beside the audio, it also have a sign language interpretation, and it has the subtitle in the larger text, so that persons who have limited vision or partially sighted can also read it. And we also have a picture on it. So this I've kept it an example. If we produce any videos, please let us try, at least initiate, to make it accessible for everyone, every youth. So may we have another next slide, please?
Next slide. Just
Yes, ma'am.
yeah.
Okay, so services. Actually, I would like to share one example. If anyone, people find very interesting and very surprising to know that person with disabilities even menstruate. And even more surprising if they find couples with disabilities having babies, and they are a sexual being. So this is true, because no matter we are, no matter a person is disability or a person has person is living with HIV or they are from LGBTIQ, no matter whatever diversity they belong to, it is, everyone is a sexual being, and this is a general truth. We should realize this truth. And in case of health services, every aspect I have talked relates, because most of the health institutions, health are not accessible, not reachable, and even the health service provider are not skilled enough to treat diversified groups. And this is not only in case of disability, even to LGBTIQ population, the situation is similar. And the skills, the taboos, and multiple factors play a role in this. And FPAN has initiated, and they have, FPAN has trained the service provider and also staffs in disability friendly trainings. And so the clinics of FPAN and the staffs and service provider there have knowledge in disability and how to communicate with them in a proper way. So this should be focused by everyone. Please, next slide, please. So yes, intersectionality. This is a key word that all of us should keep in our mind, because most of us generally talk about youth and forget about intersectionality, that how we are living with a multiple identity. We are women, we are from various places, either villages or towns, belong to a particular race, from a particular sexual orientation. And when these multiple factors, these multiple factors intersect with each other, and these create multiple patterns of discrimination. We can also see this in a picture, and we can add, as a woman, as a youth, as a disability, these patterns bring multiple sets of discrimination. So here is also a live example, and Deepti ma'am is helping me with the sharing of the screen. So this is also example of how this program is being accessible. So let's move into the next slide. So yes, here we have a experience sharing. Experience sharing from one of the active peer group member. So let's watch the video.
Good evening. Introducing myself, it's Miss Anda Thapa, and I am the peer group member of Khaskhus Team FPAN. It is a messenger group, and in this group we used to talk about SRHR related topics, and we also share some links about SRHR. And in this group I have got a golden opportunity to learn about menstruation periods and about virginity and some rough words which people use to speak to others. And I have also feel some improvement in my presentation skills, because after the discussion of topics, we used to give a brief summary of about different topics which we used to discuss in a joint call, and that's why I feel more glad to be in this Khaskhus Team group. And this group is very effective, so all the members are very interactive, and they also used to share their feelings and knowledge about different topics, and we can also share our feelings. Thank you so much.
This Khaskhus group is a messenger group where the peer educators may meet in a joint call at least once in a week, and they discuss in various issues and topics related to sexual and reproductive health rights. So this videos speak itself. So I think I don't need to explain further. So next slide, please. So ending note would be, please start from what you can. Thank you. If you have any queries, we will address it in a Q&A session.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that very, very excellent presentation, Sanjia, and for reminding us about the need to think about the young people in their diversities, and particularly young people living with disabilities. Thank you for that heartwarming presentation, and please stay on. I'm sure there'll be questions from the audience and about your presentation. So thank you so much, Sanjia. And audience, please hold on to your questions. Please put them on the chat box. We'll have a dialogue at the end of this. We just want to listen to all the presenters, and I'll do a recap of what they have said at the end. So I want to invite the next speaker, who is Sonal. Sonal, you have the floor.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you, Sanjaya and Anu, for that wonderful presentation. I am going to speak today about my own experience of being a bisexual woman who was also the co-founder of YARIA. YARIA is, it's a Hindi word which loosely means friendship. And this is a youth LGBTQ initiative, which is one of India's largest youth collectives. And the second is Umang. Umang is a support space for lesbians, bisexual women, and transmasculine persons. Since I have 10 minutes and there's a long story to say, I really hope I will be able to be on time. But if I'm not, Anita, please request you to let me know, if I'm going overboard. I think for the unfamiliar, it's very important to sort of set the premise itself when it comes to the LGBTQ community. In India, homosexuality was criminal right up till 2018. There was a judgment which came out in 2009 by the Delhi High Court judgment, which was, which was taken back. And then in 2018, finally, is the Supreme Court of India decriminalized homosexuality. So the movement in India is like, roughly about 30 years old. But when it comes to the legal rights, we still don't have legal rights. All that has happened is that the community has been decriminalized, but we don't have legal rights like, say, adoption or marriage or any of the other constitutional rights that a citizen of India would enjoy. I think the other thing to understand about India and the movement within India is that a lot of the organizations which are at the forefront of the work and who are visible, especially in rural areas, are organizations which primarily work on HIV intervention. Right. So what we do find is that, because of the kind of organizations working, we do find that men having sex with men, or the Hijra communities, which is a kind of transgender community, and basically male-bodied persons, cis people, gay persons, you will find that they are very much out in the country. But when it comes to the female-bodied or female-assigned gender at birth, woman-assigned gender at birth kind of persons, they are very few organizations. There are actually less than 5 registered organizations in India working for the community. And, overall, because of the kind of legal situation, the social support is also very, very less. For a very long time, you would see that, the mainstream representation of India in its film industry, which is Bollywood. It is very, very popular, Bollywood films in India. Mostly the representation that would happen of the LGBT community was very stereotypical, a feminine man who was the butt of all jokes. That is the representation of the queer community. And the other representation is somebody who's kind of non-consensual in nature and a sexual harasser, basically. That is the representation that we sort of had in India. And because of this kind of representation, what we have found is that, it has been difficult for people to be open and out. So I mean, coming from coming from my personal, I would say, standpoint, I sort of, I was very heavily influenced by the judgment that I mentioned, 2009, the Delhi High Court decriminalizing homosexuality was the first time. This was the time I sort of joined this NGO, the Humsafar Trust. And I had the opportunity of working under, the very imitable and like wonderful CEO, Mr. Vivekanand, who was the CEO of the Humsafar Trust. The Humsafar Trust, for those who are unfamiliar, is one of India's oldest registered LGBT collectives. It's about 25 years old. But, when I joined in 2009, 2010 to work in the voluntary capacity, what I did find at that point, and I think it was something even to this day, NGOs sort of struggle with, is that the populations that are walking into this space are mainly people who sort of, would come in because they want to get tested for HIV. And the impression within the communities is that, basically the NGO is a testing center, and people don't know much about the NGO outside of that. And sometimes this can be a cause for problem as well, because people were sort of afraid to be, seen around the NGO or step into the NGO for fear of, being labeled as queer or for fear of being outed. And I think like it's important to understand this fear of being outed in India, especially. So in India, we have a very kind of, relational society. We live with our families. There is a joint family system. If you have a problem with your child, you will not throw them out. You will beat them up in the house and fix them. That is the attitude of, good parenting. I would say this is a very broad generalization, but just to like kind of fill you in. And I'm sure it is in the South Asian communities as well. But yeah, so what we do find is that, family violence is very, very high and no representation. And what we were finding was that young people were really not walking in. And around this time, in around 2010, the CEO of the Humsafar Trust, he actually called 10 of us for a youth consultation to sort of, understand what were the challenges of the youth. And at that time, it was 10 people. Some were working in the organization. Mostly, there were other people who were friends of, the organization. And I remember we had a meeting at that time. And in this meeting, actually, there was an activist who also happened to just be at the drop-in center when the meeting was happening. And he told us that, on the same day, exactly 10 years back, India had its first Pride Walk. And it was only 10 people. And, the group was called Yariyan, right? And about 10 years later, there were 10 people in the room. So we decided that we will call the group Yariyan as well. So initially, we were just consulting the organization, but at some point, the organization also handed over us the responsibility of taking care of a film screening that they used to do every month. And while we took responsibility of that particular initiative, what we realized was that, there was a kind of gap, in terms of the organization understanding what is the kind of events young people want and what was being delivered on the ground. So, these film screenings, while they were very difficult films to get, yet, the young generation had access to torrent and things like that to be able to, see these films. So there were just 1 or 2 people who were coming into the center. So initially, we didn't think much of it, but it made a huge difference in the long run. Was that what we realized was that these communities, after 2009 especially, did not want to still continue to meet in the closet. They wanted to go out for public events. And while initially our events were, in-house, what we started doing was things like picnics or things like, performances outside. And we found that the turnout was much higher because, we were riding on the wave of the decriminalization that happened. But also while having this group, we realized that this was the reality for only some of us. The other reality was completely stark and completely contrast. And the contrasting stark reality was that on our online forums, what we found was that almost every day, there were stories of people who were facing bullying, in their educational spaces. There were, cases of people who were facing harassment at their workplace. Beyond that, family violence was something that was really coming up pretty continually, So for me, I mean, personally at that time, when I was seeing this kind of issues sort of cropping up on that forum, I did feel the need to be more out, because I felt I was privileged enough to sort of be out. I didn't really see any LBT within that to be, out at that time. So we started conducting, workshops. So initially I have to say that, one of the learnings was that, I can say that now we do events, many kinds of events. It's a mix of social events and workshops which are health related or community needs related. But I think like the big change maker in terms of like, no people walking into the drop-in center to moving to 1,000 people walking in our events. The main difference in bringing up this vulnerable community, I think I would say, was that, we heard the community, we listened to the community, and we allowed the community to do the events it wanted. And I think that what we figured out in the long run was that the primary need of the community was actually socialization. It was not HIV testing as much as it was socialization. And if you allowed a space for socializing and you created a sense of trust within the community, you invested a sense of, commitment to capacitating the community, it kind of also returned the favor, So what we found that if you ensure that, over the years that you built friendship and a sense of family within the communities, when you did events which were related to SRHR, there was a huge turnout. And in the long run, it was in fact led by young people. The SRHR initiatives were led by young people. It was a slightly different story, I would say, for LBT communities. They continue to be very, very hidden populations, mainly because sexuality, especially women's sexuality in India, is very, very policed generally. And within that, if you look at the lesbian bisexual population, it's very much hypersexualized, and it's very unsafe, frankly, to be out as a lesbian bisexual woman, in the workplace or anywhere else within families. There's a very, very strong threat of, being housebound, house arrested, and, all your, right to freedom kind of snatched away from you, and physical harm. This continues to be the reality, of course, trans people as well. So at Umang, what we did was that, what we tried to do to kind of ensure that, more people turned up was that, again, listen to the community, listen to the challenges. So obviously we had to, ensure that there is a lot of confidentiality in these spaces. Even our registers that, you sort of enter, we don't have to write the real name or, of the person. We do not record, any of our events for, just because it kind of creates a fear. Even if we are not going to use it anyway, it does create a sense of fear. So we sort of don't do that. We initially work with, events where we build trust. There's more socializing, there are more, easy on you kind of events, and then move to more, I think, like, workshop based material and build capacity for somebody to even represent in the community. I think that since I have about a minute left, I would like to just like sort of, end with saying that currently, like I mentioned, in India, we have, a reach across India, and in the last 10 years, it's been both the initiatives have around been from 2010. I think I have I have a big sense of family from all around India. I have seen the journey of young people who were, in such difficult places, completely in the closet, not able to come out to, their families and not even imagine it, come out very bravely and represent their communities in their specific, cities or in their rural areas. I've been part of many workshops where you build capacities of young people around India. And I've seen the work that, translates on the ground when you believe in young people and, you sort of hand over the responsibility sort of back to them, because they are ready, they are very much ready, and they are very motivated individuals. It's really about, stepping out of these platforms and handing it over to young people if you really want to see the change that you want to be. That's
Thank you very much, Sonal, for sharing, that excellent, wonderful, transformative advocacy that you've done, with ensuring that the LGBTQ community, the LGBTQ, and bringing together the community and understanding their needs I think that is, an excellent demonstration of, advocacy, strategy, and, really appreciate, your insights and your activism. Thank you so much. And please stay on. I'm sure the audience would love to understand and, get your perspectives, particularly on strategy and in engaging the LGBTQ. Thank you so much, Sonal. So we want to move to Arjun. Arjun, you have 10 minutes. Just share with us, your own activism on, and a very interesting area on, environment. And this is absolutely has a link with, sexual and reproductive health rights today. So Arjun, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for giving me this great opportunity to share my experience with you all over world. So we have an organization called Green Youth of Lumbini. We are working for nature conservation and youth advocacy in our community. So we have
Sorry, is it just me or we've lost connection with Arjun?
Yeah,
Arjun,
Anita, I think we lost Arjun's connection.
Yeah, I think we lost Arjun's connection as he is trying to reconnect. Perhaps, we could, begin to, just pose some few questions, to the panelists. There are a couple of questions that have come on board, particularly to Sanjia and Anu. And, there is a question on the chat. Sanjia, you talked about, your CSE, a comprehensive sexuality education work with FPAN. What are the challenges that you have experienced in incorporating CSE in the school curriculum? And how did you overcome these challenges, especially, the bias and inhibitions around CSE? And also, just to add on to that question, what curriculum are you using? Are you using the It's All One curriculum? And how has that been? Thank you. Anu?
Yes, I think I'll take that one. So Arjun is back.
Yeah, sorry.
So
okay, Arjun is back. Okay, Arjun, we'll give you time. If your network is not so stable, you can just mute your video so that your network is more stable. That's totally okay.
I'm that the first thing is important for education. So we are education in our community.
Sorry, Dipti, please mute your microphone, please. Thank you. Arjun, continue.
Yeah, so we have 30 eco clubs in our community. So more of them are youth in our groups. So we go with the eco clubs, we call eco club, and we share about our campaign like nature conservation campaign and SRH campaign, like, and we focus how can we involve youths in a education system, like formal education system and informal education system. So more of them are out of community, out of school, youths are also involved in our campaign, and we are coordinate with our municipality, and family planning association is also our partner. We have a peer education system in our community, and we have a youth information center in our community. So from our organization, we go in health post, local health post also. How can we make our health post youth friendly? How can youth can share their problem about SRS? So there was a great change in our community, and everyone inspired us for this kind of work. And I want to explain an example of our madrasa in our community. There was a madrasa where near about 300 students are studying. Most of them are girls. More than 80% of the students are girls. So they have no bench, they just sit down on the plastics or their mats. So when we go there and we got a chance to work with them, so there was a no toilet, no drinking water, and students or teenagers who were used to sit down in the ground. So we are working with a WWF Nepal. So they commitment that we make a benches for girls and we make a toilet for girls also. So in this event we are just be a bridge with the WWF and school. So we go to make their toilet and drinking water and benches also. The from these activities the number of students gone increase. Now in that madrasa there was more than 90 100 students, 900, sorry, 900 students. And we can share all things what we want to change in our community about SRH. So that was good chances to go to close with Muslim. And everyone know there was a cultural problem also, their traditional problem, and uh, uh, every community have their own tradition, their own culture. So we don't go to disturb their culture or their tradition. But through the education we are going in community and we live, we give them a good education about SRH. And now we have also a community clinic in a Muslim community where there was a lot of women's or girls or youth go and got our information about SRS. And through that we have also a idea how can we involve a youth in our this campaign about SRS or other thing. We have a livelihood program also. We involve a youth from that side also. We gave them a training and we gave them a some of funding also to uh, improve their business or to work with a community for a, entrepreneur. So that was also an idea to involve a youth in this campaign. Or uh, we can talk more than youth for changing of our community. So and most of important thing is a local government, how local government is working in our community. So we involve lot of youths in our government action, in government forum, so they can take their own decisions. There was a lot of community or committee in our local government municipality where the youth are leading, so they can put out their own experience, their own problems. And we are also advocating with a municipality for SRH education in our community schools. And we can lobbying with the mayor or our ward chairman for the best education system for SRH. And now we our municipality or school are going to celebrate different kind of programs like like a municipality level youth forum campaign. So from that the youth are going to increase, they got a chance to share about their problem to local government, and government is also going to action for that. And most of important thing is without with a hungry stomach no one can listen any kind of things. So that was a problem in our community also. Everyone want to got something from government or for community. So we gave them a skill, we gave the skill to youth who are involved in our campaign. So they got chance to involved in our program, and the family is also allowed them to go with us because they have not go in a wrong way. So people are trust us, community are trusting us. So we can share a lot of things with youth like SIB aids, like others problems they can share share us. And in our community, there was a Muslim community, so youth can also involve in with us, like on Condom Day, Muslim communities youths are involved in we must use a condom for our safety, for our reproductive health. So that was a great example for our community. How can we are working with youth, and FPAN is our partner. FPAN is funding us to improve, to do a lot of things in our community.
Thank you so much, Arjun, for sharing with us your own experience in community activism, and you link the linking between your work on environment and sexual and reproductive health and rights. The very detailed and strategic approaches that you have employed to ensure young people's tech leadership in community activism. I think there's a lot for us to learn from what you're already doing. Thank you so much, Arjun. So, we want to, now open the floor for discussions, and I'll just be doing a 1 minute brief recap of what has been said by the presenters. So we had Sanjia and Anu, take us through, CSC and youth engagement within the context of Family Planning Association of Nepal. And Anu shared with us, how CSC uptake has been within Nepal, and the uptake of services as well by young people. And Sanjia, really took us through, the how to engage, a diversity of young people, particularly those who are living with disability, and how young people who are living with disabilities assume also have multiple identities, which we don't need to forget. And indeed, I think she mentioned, the persons with disability are also sexual beings, which is often not understood or assumed. Then Sonal, really took us through, some of the most strategic ways to engage, diversity of LGBTQ. And, she talked about, the Delhi High Court decision, and how, they took advantage of that decision, to support the advocacy, and how really, they listened to, the LGBTQ community, and how, they assumed, their needs, and having listened to them, they were able to understand their needs. And she also mentioned some of the challenges that she has seen, the lack of support for LGBTQ, lack of many organizations who are working at the grassroots level to support young people who are LGBTQ. And lastly, Arjun really, quite interesting also, in terms of his approach, environment and sexual and reproductive health and rights, and, young people leading the advocacy with the municipality in his area. And indeed also involving young people who are from different faiths in advocacy on, access to condoms in his community. So thank you all so very much. Exciting presentations. I've learned a lot personally as a moderator. I want to open the floor for discussion. And I think we'll go back to Anu. And Anu, you had a question initially from, sorry, let me just get it, from Rashmi. Rashmi, I had a question for you. So the question is three-part. What are the challenges in incorporating CSC? How did you overcome them, especially the inhibitions? And I added another layer. What guide, CSC guide, are you using within your context? So Anu, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Anita, and thank you, Rashmi, for taking this, for bringing this question on the floor. So this is, the challenges for incorporating CSC is still very high. Without long advocacy, right? We are at the current stage, we are to some extent being able to integrate the CSC into the national curriculum. and the government has partially included from grade 8 to from grade 6 to 8, and have fully integrated into from grade 9 to 12. However, we have still facing the challenge to make it a very comprehensive age appropriate CSC education, to deliver this comprehensive and age specific CSC education, because we have been telling, and there is some the government is also sharing their challenge to integrate all the components into this into like what we have been advocating, and how extensive we want CSC into it, because their understanding for the CSC is still been limited to the sex education. However, we have been a series of policy dialogue, sensitization program are navigating to broaden their understanding on the CSE. But we feel that we need to do a lot more on the CSE integration, and we are also hopeful that in the coming days we will able to convince government to integrate for the full integration of CSE into national curriculum. And currently with FPAN being leading the advocacy campaign for it along with its stakeholders, being able to integrate CSE into the National Education Sector Plan, which will be the guiding document for development of the national curriculum framework. So we are hopeful that in coming days the CSE will be the curriculum will spell out more in a very wider way into the national curriculum, and this is the curriculum that the government has made on its national education curriculum framework. So they have the integration, Anita, into the different subjects. Not only CSE is not a standalone subject, but has been integrated into the various subjects based on its components and the nature of components. It has been integrated across 2 to 3 subjects. So,
Brilliant.
yeah.
Thank you so much, Anu. Thank you so much for sharing that and for your efforts in that. And Rashmi is also acknowledging your response and saying, thank you so much. Your efforts and advocacy have started showing results. So thank you, Rashmi, for that kind comment. We want to also ask, is there any other question from the participants to any of the presenters? I think as participants are, thinking about the questions, and I would like to, understand from you, Sanjia, what have been, your challenges as a young person, in terms of, participation, or not necessarily you, but, other young people. I know you've spoken about this, but, what do you see as the greatest challenge for, to ensure young people's, particularly young people who are living with disabilities, their, meaningful participation? Because, more often than not, we find, young people who are living with any form of disability are just brought into meetings and they're not given, time to prepare. They're not, given opportunity to speak. We just don't want to tick boxes and say, we had young people with disabilities. So what would you say, is the greatest challenge, and what would you recommend to be done in terms of addressing that challenge? Sanjia?
Yes, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay. Yes, as I also mentioned in my presentation, first one is stigma that we are attached with, that brings attitude. And another one would be the accessibility, accessibility in terms of infrastructures, and also the judgmental attitude of the service providers and everyone in the society. And another one would be digital accessibility, as the internet is one of the best medium to learn, but for us it's still a big challenge. And another one I would like to highlight is about the in Nepal, we still don't have disaggregated national level data. Hopefully in 2021, we are ongoing census. So we are very hopeful that this year we will be getting the disaggregated data, and then we can have design various types of policies and so on. So we should always focus on integrating disability related issues in our programs. We have several programs, several occasions, and several events. Now we should always keep in our mind that there are also persons with disabilities. So in the current programs and plan we are having, we can integrate the disability issues. Such, for example, if we are making a documentary or making a video, we can include the sign language interpretation. We can include the subtitle in a comparatively larger text. So, and keeping it in a simpler form without jargon. So only these small initiatives can support youth with disabilities in terms of learning. And in Nepal, and I hope in most of the Asian countries, the biggest issue disabilities are facing is about sexual violence and forced sterilization.
Yeah.
In Nepal is the biggest issue, and even in terms of global level, we can even have the representative in the governance level, in the boards, and disability issues should be addressed through policy level in organizations, in institutions, even in the government, and it should be also included in the strategy development and in a strategy development and in every activities. So it is not, I would say, it is not a separate issue, because we should be always aware of intersecting issues. So leaving no one behind, and we should always focus on integrating disability in other programs as well, because disability is not only a separate issue. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sanjia, for that very passionate thoughts on what we need to do. And I just wanted to bring in Sonal here. Sonal, Sanjia, spoke about intersectionality. That young people who are living with disabilities, have other intersecting or multiple identities that need to be taken into consideration. And when you are speaking about, young people, who are LGBTQ, I think, that is also often forgotten. And I just wanted to hear from you, within the community that you've worked with, were there other intersecting or multiple identities that sort of, posed a challenge for you? Because, I imagine that, in your context, if a young person is, bisexual, for example, they may be coming from a poor family, they may be having other, challenges. How did that play out in your context, and how did you address it?
I think definitely when it came to any kind of intersection happening, it did end up in a multiple marginalization that happened. So in India, we also have the issue of caste, right? So whenever there is an intersection of, say, caste or gender, sexuality, disability, it was more difficult. So I mean, so for example, just as an example, if we had somebody who it is a young woman who is facing problems from their family, one of the things that we would find is that maybe the religion is very orthodox, that the religious family is very religious, it's also orthodox. That has also led to the person not being allowed to be financially independent. And so when there is no financial independence, a lot of it is got to do with your gender, the fact that you're a woman and they do not want you to be financially independent. So that would sort of come in the way. So even if we sort of did a rescue, it would be challenging to, get this person a job, or things like that. And definitely when it comes to, again, when gender intersects, that what we find is that if it is a trans person who is a lesbian, it's a trans lesbian, there are trans lesbian is facing a multiple, I think, like a stigma of one, of course, homophobia, but also the transphobia within queer spaces, so it becomes challenging. And I think it's very, very important to talk about the intersection of disability. It's again something that you don't talk about. We don't talk about sexuality within disability, and we don't talk about differing sexuality within the disability at all. I know only of one project which is very, very popular within these communities, which is part of the Point of View, which is again a great organization based out of Bombay, working on disability and sexuality in the intersection of it. And I think it becomes more challenging, So reaching both these communities, especially the, the hearing disabled community, the deaf communities, it has been a sort of challenge to make these spaces more inclusive. So we are trying, within our pride spaces to have language interpreters, but it's like just not enough, it is not enough. And one definitely feels that, one imagines that if you were queer, you would be more sensitive to marginalization, you'd be more sensitive to your own privilege, but it has not really translated, the spaces I'm part of, whatever mainstream society imbibes, it is kind of translated within these spaces. So it is very hard work, to engage within these communities. But at least we have a starting point, to question privilege and to question power.
Absolutely, absolutely. At least I agree with you. At least we have a starting point. And I think the assumption that, if sometimes, you would, people who are often marginalized also see the marginalizations in other people. It's not often the case. So thank you so much for reminding us that. And I just wanted also to bring in Arjun here. And Arjun, the panelists have really spoken to, the different ways in which they've tried to engage. And I think you also, very passionately talked about, how you're engaging young people within the municipality. And I just wanted to ask, from your perspective, what do you mean by meaningful youth participation? What makes it meaningful for young people to, what do we mean by meaningful youth participation in your perspective?
In my way, I just want to share that if we have a audience who are going to listen what we say, I just going to give you an example for like HIV. If we are going to talk about HIV, so we need a lot of youth who are related with HIV. So there was a different kind of way when you go in community. First, you can publish that we are going to make a campaign about HIV. So a lot of youths are not involved. A person who are positive is not involved in this campaign. So there was different way, like we are going to plantation. Like we are going to plant a tree. So please help us and come and join this campaign. So we are going to this campaign, we plant a tree, and then we gather a lot of youth and we share about youth empowerment, like HIV is this kind of disease and we must cure about HIV. So we can do a lot of things like a blood donation program, and like a HIV screening. So that is way I just want to say that we must involve our youth and we give a good information to them. So we need a community, we need our government, we need our school, our teachers, so we can make a circle or make our platform to share a lot of things like a youth information center, and eco club. So we can share a lot of things with from different way.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Arjun, for sharing, your sentiments and, for, I think what I'm getting from you is, you're using, the aspect of environment and linking it up with sexual and reproductive health rights education, something that, is very appealing to young people. So, very strategic approaches in how you're increasing young people's participation. Any question from the floor before we conclude? We want to conclude this discussion. And I'm just wondering from the panel, is there anybody who has any question to any of the panelists, fellow panelists? If not, I think I just want to say thank you so much on behalf of IPPF and on behalf of my colleagues at the South Asia Regional Office. It's been a real pleasure to learn from what you already are doing in the different contexts in which you are. And I'm hoping that this will be not the last conversation, but that we will have more conversations such as this, when possible. Thank you, Sanjia, for your very warm and very great recommendations. Thank you, Anu, for sharing your work on CSC. It's been absolutely lovely. Thank you so much, Sonal. It's been great learning about your strategic approaches to LGBTQ activism, and thank you very much to Arjun, for the strategy that you employ in linking your work on environment and sexual and reproductive health and rights. From me, it's been a real pleasure, and I want to take it back to Deepti to give us a way forward. Deepti?
Yeah, so first of all, I'd like to thank all of you on behalf of IPPF SARO for taking out time for, Anita for moderating the session, and Sanjaya, Anu, Sonal, and Arjun for speaking. It was a very insightful discussion, and we really learned a lot. Thank you so much once again, and we really look forward to, further engagements and further discussions on the topic, not just this one. Thanks a lot.
Thank you all, and bye-bye. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.